You're still tuned to Plus TV Africa. INEC has rescheduled the elections in some local government areas in Rivers, Lagos and Anambra State. And we have reports that in 4 local governments in Jos, elections are going on. This may affect the overall coalition of results. To look at this, we have in the studio Honorable Enwela Mustafa. He's the State Secretary of the Liberation Movement, a party here in Nigeria. Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Now, in your assessment, we had yesterday's election. Before we get into the crux of the matter, which has to do with INEC having to postpone elections again in Lagos, Rivers and Anambra State, how did you think the elections went so far? From a bird's eye view, your party participated in election.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, for me, if I have to rate yesterday's election, of course, there's a lot to say, but it went fairly well. But we cannot but talk about the pockets of violence here and there, and lateness from the electoral officers coming to polling unit late. Some polling units started pretty late. Some, in fact, some did not even see presence of INEC officials. For example, places like Bonuyadi in Yobe State didn't see INEC officials' presence. Some had to go to some had to be directed to Damaturu. Places like Alausa, the electoral officers got there late. But in the overall, yes, maybe INEC tried their best, but I think that a lot could have been done better in terms of security. Probably we could have avoided the pockets of violence here and there, because for me, I do not make any sense of when people die during elections period. I do not make any sense of it.
Talking about trying their best as it concerns INEC, INEC had 4 years to prepare, and then they had an extra week because of logistics. And the same logistics was, the results of what we had. Certain areas, like you said, in Alausa, Ikeja, INEC officials didn't show up until later. And in certain places in the southeast, we heard that, some of these officials came with ballot papers that were not, right. In fact, we heard that some places there was a ballot paper, there were ballot papers for presidential, there were no ballot papers for National Assembly. So it seems it was like, INEC in itself was discombobulated, for want of better words to use.
Yeah. Well, for we to really assess the overall overall of what INEC did yesterday, for me, I think it's very relative, because some had it very good and some didn't have it good at all. Yes, but for me, I'm so much against the violence that came up in some part of the country yesterday, because I think that we had lots of violence in these elections compared to 2015 election. And for me, INEC did so well in some areas, but in terms of security, I don't think they did enough.
But were you surprised at the end of the day? Because when we're looking at the whole election, from our own perspective, are the areas where we had leading state actors and leading political figures, elections went relatively well, apart from that in Lagos State, where the governor actually had to get there as at 7:30 and didn't meet any officials there. But the coordination at those polling units where these actors participated in, everything seemed fine. And on the flip side, where the masses, where we had throngs of individuals participating, the everyday Nigerian, who is the most important person in this electoral process, we had issues of breakout of violence. But before we even reach that violence and how we saw the deployment of police officials and the compromise that comes from that area, how do we explain the fact that we have INEC staff who are supposed to report 8 o'clock, should have been 8 o'clock, they didn't get there on time? How did this rub off for you? And the issue of smart card readers, yes, we understand that these are gadgets or devices that could always have a last-minute hitch here or there, but there were provisions for technical men to be there to ensure that these worked out just fine. We also had another lapse there. So let's start off with those 2 areas, then we'll now shift really into violence.
Well, for areas where the top shots, so to call them, voted, yes, we made an account of little or no.
Was that all part of the service we're used to?
Where the president, Muhammad Buhari, voted was a very itch-free place. There was any record of violence. It was very peaceful. But then it didn't go so well with the governor of Yobe State, because I tell you for free that even the governor of Yobe State couldn't vote because of the bomb scare. So, and the options the security operatives had was to reinforce more security around him to go vote. But on the second thought, they felt that if we had to call back security operatives at different polling units just for the governor to vote, then what are we leaving the masses for? Are we exposing them to more danger or not? So in that case, they had to leave.
So they had to sacrifice the governor.
Sacrifice the governor's vote for the masses to vote. So, but then.
But like the bulk of our state governors actually have their own on an easy plate.
But somebody like Jimmy Agbaje experienced the smart card reader problem because it took him hours for the machine to work properly, and few other people too had the same issues. A certain governor in another state too had the same issue with the smart card reader. But in the overall, we can only give INEC some, maybe a 50% overall. And
the lack of technical staff to assist where there were card reader failures.
Where there were I think the places where there were card reader failures, I think they had to resort to manual accreditation just for voters not to be disenfranchised. So.
Or were you impressed by the excuse that they had to wait hours upon hours trying to reach their technical team? The assurance from INEC was that there would have been a stationed technical person to ensure that either there is a supplementary card reader there or the one that is faulty is worked on immediately.
For me, while I was on the show a few days ago, I have already predicted that, yes, we should expect a snag or one or two snags from the smart card reader because, of course, these are machines. And the same thing happened in 2015 where it was slow. Some areas were it was not even functioning properly yet. But then, you know, it can only get better. But I just hope that things would have been done to reduce the level of violence that we had yesterday. Because for me, it was way too much.
Apart from that, let's talk about the fact that maybe security agents were more focused on the bigwigs. Because, like he said, those areas had no violence whatsoever. So where we had polling units where we had big politicians or maybe a governor or senator, we didn't record any violence. But when it got to, like he said, where the masses were, for example, in Okota, while they were all running up and down, it was just one police officer that was there.
And it was not even harmed. It wasn't
harmed. It was looking on, actually.
Exactly. And according to law, there's supposed to be some armed police officers around some meters away from the polling unit. Where were those people?
Well,
and just like some people would say, it doesn't just take, a matchstick to burn ballot papers to that point. It was something they settled down to do. How come reinforcement was not gotten at the time?
Well, it is not a new thing that the big shots in the society most times in Nigeria, gets to be overprotected and the poor masses are left unprotected. Yeah, but then I don't think that is the way to go because I think the masses ought to be more protected because they are the ones who are very vulnerable. Little or no security will still do for the big shot. But in places like Okota, we had cases where in fact the reports we got was that the security operatives even got phone calls and left the scene even before the talks got there. That means they got a tip off that this was going to happen and they left the scene before the talks got there to disrupt the entire process. But like I said, for me, I didn't really get a lot of satisfactory reports yesterday.
But now looking at that, because our previous conversation yesterday, we were talking about reinforcement and utilizing intelligence. Now, this showed well that we don't have enough of security personnel deployed across the country to hold elections peacefully and successfully. But at the end of the day, some local reports say that the vigilantes are aware of the individuals or the perpetrators of violence, misconduct, etc. Using Okota as an example, using Oshodi as an example. Yes, there are fires shot in the air, but these vigilantes know themselves and know who are attacking where. So how then do we now utilize this and join it to our security apparatus? Then we can have a more formidable front, saying that, well, we understand you might have political leanings. Yeah, human beings, for crying out loud, and have an opinion. But we must ensure that if you are interested in Party A or Party B, just see to it that we have smooth elections, not necessarily be the perpetrator of violence.
Well, over time, we have overemphasized that even the local vigilantes should be co-opted in security jobs, like when it has to do with national issues like this. But then maybe it's more of the instructions, the security
They
operatives.
flaw the argument with the fact that those individuals can also be compromised. Do you
Of course,
think
yes, that is not totally
that's enough
impossible.
of an excuse?
It's not totally impossible. But then I believe that there should have been maybe a sort of joint venture arrangement between them, such that they could, assist each
intel.
other, assist each other in sharing intel, and so all goes into a bid of having a smooth, free, and credible election, particularly a violence-free one.
There are people in certain quarters who are saying that security agencies were compromised, especially in certain states across the federation, like issues where like the waterways where ballot boxes were found, but the persons who took the ballot boxes were not found. In certain places that we hear that security agents were
stood and watched while the ballot boxes are being burnt or the miscreants have their way.
There's so many questions here and there. Where do we even start when we're talking about the people who are supposed to protect us being compromised because of elections? And there are also people who say, look, in terms of elections, security agencies mostly only listen to the man at the helm of affairs, being that it is centralized, whether it's the police, whether it's the army. They don't necessarily report to the security officer of that state or wherever they find themselves. Is that not a problem in itself?
Well, in the overall, yes, if we want to take a toll from 2015 election, yes, sometimes we have security operatives compromising sometimes, but not all the time. Like in the case of what happened in the 2015 election, of course, the man at the ends of affairs, of course, was the chief security officer of the state, of the country, and of course, the security still had a lot to do. They still, maintained a level of duty, and they delivered. But then, I think this particular election that happened yesterday had a lot to do with a lot of security breach, and maybe they gave too much gaps for thugs and hoodlums.
But the security apparatus really understand what politicking is all about in Nigeria, because if you look at the numbers that we had, over 9, that's just local reports that we can confirm, over 9 dead in Rivers State. We saw images in Lagos, gory images that you can't even show the viewer out there. We saw other images from Abuja. Somebody was shot dead, being taken to Gwagwalada and refused even a first aid treatment. The lady had been butchered. Virtually butchered. Yeah. She looked like mincemeat, for crying out loud,
I saw the video.
In those areas. So who then do we put a blame on for these areas where we've seen huge lapses? Now, first and foremost, we are saying we don't have enough intelligence to say we are tracking these individuals. Then how do we then nip this trend in the bud and say we don't have a repeat during the governorship elections? Because that's also another keenly contested issue. How then do we manage all of this? Then where lies the role of the DIGs who were deployed across these areas? What exactly should be their response? Investigation, we're not having any of those yet started.
Well,
it's already 24 hours
Well,
going.
for me, I think the INEC chairman, as a person, has a lot of explanation to do to Nigerians. And of course, even the Inspector General of Police as a person also has a lot of explanation to do, because the Inspector General, the INEC chairman as a commission, they gave the security operatives the expected amount they required for these elections to go smooth and free.
30,000 plus to every state.
To every state, which was a lot of money. So so when I heard that figure, I didn't expect that we will still have accounts of violence here and there. But we can only say that we were not really satisfied with the violence here and there. But I think it is very necessary for INEC as a commission and Inspector General of Police to come up with a report and tell us why these things happen, because I foresee if you don't prevent or analyze how these things happen, the governorship election is just a few weeks to come, and we should have measures on ground to avoid similar things happening.
Let me quickly brief you. INEC stance right now says that until they get verified information, that is the first-hand information from their electoral officers, nothing can be done. We've not heard any new briefing from the police or the army saying, well, this is the feedback we got from the individuals who dispatched or deployed to polling units XYZ or these local government areas. So what level of information should we now be expecting to hold accountable? Because if they are not feeding us the information, how then do we now say, well, we expect this because we're supposed to build on our systems and structure? You give us information, then we can prove for them, well, we saw person XYZ was dead here and this person was injured. But now you're not giving us any information. You leave room for fake news to thrive, and we don't even know how to hold these actors or authorities accountable. Or do we?
Well, we have always said it that our stakeholders are not always very prompt to churn out relevant information when incident happens. And for me, that's when there's a lacuna between the stakeholders and those are the masses. When information that they're supposed to be disseminated don't get disseminated at a particular time, then of course, like you said, the room for fake news come up. But we expect that by now we should have gotten enough feelers from all the stakeholders involved from INEC, from the security operatives, the head, the IG of police, to tell us what is the way forward. How do we prevent this sort of violences from coming up in 2 weeks to come?
What reports did you have from your party faithful?
Well, most of our party members who went out to vote were some were not really happy with the conduct in their locality, and some had it good. But like I said,
then how do they hold these authorities accountable? Because that's my question. First and foremost, we don't know how to expect information, or we expect information and it's not given to us, but we don't know how to hold these individuals accountable.
It is a very simple thing in the sense that we as a party are waiting to get, I've gotten some feelers, but we're waiting to get more feelers. Then we put a report across to INEC on the feelers we get, so they can probably to make them improve better on coming elections, and also to make necessary adjustments where necessary.
Have you, because you just can't go to INEC, you must have to get all the necessary information from all our party agents across board. Before you can actually bring up a paper to INEC. So have you done that? Because it's barely 24 hours.
No, we haven't done that yet. We're still collecting our reports from different angles too. Just like we have some elections being rerun today, so we have to wait to get all the figures.
Before we delve into the election reruns today, now in Osun State, we had at 3 a.m. this morning, unknown gunmen also going to attack INEC office in Oriade local government area. They destroyed some of the smart card readers. That means we've lost some information. They burned some ballot boxes, some ballot papers. That means we've lost some data. They also burned the INEC office. We saw these trends before the election. What level of preparedness, if you know the INEC office was having stock of these sensitive materials, how do we explain it? Unknown gunmen, what language is that, and what do you expect from INEC's delivery this time around?
There seems to be a lot of unknown things.
There seems to be a really lot of unknown. For me, I don't even expect that an INEC office during this time of the elections will not be manned by heavy security operators like the police, maybe the army, because that building for me is a sensitive building as it is. And of course, vital information are kept in those buildings that has to do with the outcome of our election. So now, if a place like Osun State, the INEC office was truncated and a lot of information got missing there, because I woke up in the morning to that video and I was like, why is this happening? If we had an election yesterday, they took back election materials to that building, and some hoodlums went there overnight. Where were the security operatives when it happened? So for me, I'm not still very comfortable with a lot of things going on in our security terrain. There's a lot of lapses here and there, and we need to really up our games.
All right, we have a report quickly. The Minister of Information talking about this issue of election. But before then, why are we shocked? Before the election, we had gunmen unknown people going to INEC offices across the nation, burning things. Shouldn't we have taken a leaf from that? Why are we acting like we're shocked, that this is happening even after the elections? But let's take a look at what the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, had to say about the elections that held
yesterday. Talking about free, fair, credible elections.
Let's take a listen.
A certain polling unit in Owo State in particular, the card readers are not functioning, and we've reported this to the authorities. We also noticed that in most areas, the disparity between the electoral materials for the presidential election and for the National Assembly election. Again, we have brought this to the notice of the authorities. Reports from other areas is that, for instance, there's a meeting in Asa local government where materials meant for Google is taken to Wode. Again, we have also reported this. Card readers, like I said, are not working about 5 minutes in our own work alone. And we have also that there's no adequate police or security presence in certain areas such as Agashe, Agbiola. This again, we've already alerted the authorities.
Well, the Honourable Minister obviously there is complaining about the fact that INEC didn't get its acts together because you had wrong materials going to different polling units. In fact, people didn't even know where they were going to vote. It wasn't there on their cards. Some went online, still didn't know exactly where their polling units were. So
the register was also pasted as well.
So some people would think it's this polling unit. They go there and their names are not there. They have to go to the next. So it was a little messy yesterday. INEC, as much as we wanted to believe INEC with all of the daily briefings they were giving leading up to the elections, we were hoping that it would be a lot easier and way better because of that suspension or cancellation or postponement. But it seemed like they didn't do anything in that one week other than just coming in front of the cameras and telling us what they were doing and the smart cards being reformatted. That's basically it.
You see, for me, I think that as much as INEC prepare and put in so much for these elections we had yesterday, for INEC to really perform excellently, there's going to be a lot of cooperation from not just INEC alone, and particularly the ad hoc staffs too. The ad hoc staffs too had their own blame too, because they had their own fault because they were trained and they were given a particular instruction on what time to resume at the polling unit. But of course, you can't. So the honest truth is you can't have a perfect system, even in advanced countries. But you can have a very excellent system at the same time.
Talking about training, what level of training do you also expect this ad hoc staff and INEC officials to be briefed on when they are going in for elections? Because in areas like Oshodi, Okota, and other flashpoints, using Lagos as a case study, we know where there might be breakouts of violence, and even if we are not expecting breakouts of violence, they should be taught some basic level of managing, doing some level of management, synergizing, transporting materials quickly within that split second. Yes, we may know that they get startled by some gunshots here and there, but to manage how much of an intensity we have, don't you think they need some level of training as much, having cues from the police as well?
Well, for me, you can't completely blame the ad hoc staffs because, of course, when you hear as a person, when you hear gunshots, you take on your heels. But then, particularly because I have worked as a RO some few years ago while I was serving as a youth, and the level of training that they gave us then was just very basic: how to operate the card reader, how to register people. But we didn't really have
training on how to even protect yourself.
No training of such. And that's a problem.
But you see, INEC constitutionally is saddled with the responsibility of conducting their umpires. They're not law enforcement agents.
Of course, they're not.
So should INEC be telling people or training their staff on self-defense, taekwondo, or how to duck when they hear gunshots?
To an extent, if we've seen failures from the military, from the police, then it means you have to rely on self-defense this time around.
How do you defend yourself, David, from bullets?
The only level of defense as I had then as an electoral officer was to take on my heels when
they tell you just come for safety.
Talking about taking to your heels, the pictures on social media, it made the news of core members who were in the line of fire. There was a picture that everybody must have seen by today of a male corps member carrying a female corps member, and we had mobile police officers standing and watching.
I saw that picture. Well, for me, it just goes to show that there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we have to do when it comes to security in this country. As a country, our level of security, nobody is really safe, and I really hope that our government can really help our game, particularly in terms of security.
Well, I'll still say that
as a person, I couldn't vote, and it was quite sad because a few weeks to the elections, my house was burgled and they carted away with my PVC right in my iPad bag. Now that shows that the security of this country, for me, is not doing fantastically well at all. In fact, we have a lot to go. We have a lot to learn when it comes to securing the citizens. And for me, the primary obligation of any country or any leader in a country is to ensure that security of lives and property is guaranteed.
Should we now say INEC officials too should start wielding guns so that in case you shoot, you also shoot back and scare?
That would Trump.
That would just be
that means I don't think so. But the reason why we have isn't that the reason why we have security agencies like the police for civil?
Miriam, they are flawed.
NSCDC,
they are overwhelmed.
And
those were reports we saw. They were flawed. They were overwhelmed. They were incapable of managing the situation. They shoot in the air. Even the police camper for safety. One police officer deployed, so we still have to resort to some level of self-defense.
Of course.
Protecting ourselves.
Do you see us going back to the drawing board and doing due diligence, or is it one of those things we do? We talk about, so we yap away, and then we go back to sleep?
Well, the honest truth, yeah, we need to go back to our drawing boards to start from, to really look at things holistically. Particularly, because like I was telling somebody earlier this morning, if we want to have a totally violence-free election in Nigeria, then there's a lot that will go into it. Particularly, we will not make political seats very juicy anymore. If you make political seats very juicy... I'm sorry
to cut in. When you say we will not make, we don't make the laws.
Well, the leaders.
These same people are the ones, the people who you're asking to not make those seats juicy are sitting in those juicy positions. Can you cut your nose to spite your face?
Well, because why I'm saying that is, once they continue to make that seat very juicy, then people will be so desperate to get there. And of course, you know, desperation sometimes comes with violence because you want to get there either by hook or by crook. And you have some people you feel that you can maneuver to get them to work for you and do stuff for you, even at the detriment of other people's life. So I think that a lot has to be. We have to go back to our drawing board, particularly because we have other elections coming up. The governorship election is coming up, and we have to really get it right this time. Nobody is allowed to lose his or her life for an election purpose.
Quickly, as we're wrapping up conversations now, elections are being conducted as well as we speak right now in 4 polling units in Plateau State. That's going on. And then we also know that INEC has postponed elections in Rivers, Lagos, and then Anambra States due to the skirmishes that were witnessed across the local government areas. Do you think we would see a repeat of what happened yesterday if INEC sets a new date for these elections?
Well, my biggest worry is now that there's a rerun for these elections, of course, it would affect the overall collation of results. So until we get the final result from INEC of whoever wins, of course, we'll continue to get fake news of who won online. But then, I just hope that INEC sees what happened yesterday as a very big problem and quickly provide a solution to it to avoid a bigger problem. What happened yesterday was a mess because I didn't expect any level of violence at all, considering the level of input that INEC put into security, the money spent for this election in particular. I thought that by now they had everything well planned. So, but then, for them to avoid a recurrence of such thing in the coming elections, I hope that they can get the security of
March 9 is just a few days more to go. We have 4 days to end this month, and then we count down extra 9 days. Whether or not INEC has really learnt a lesson, that remains a matter for time to tell. Thank you very much for speaking with us. Ewina Mustafa, he is the State Secretary of Liberation Movement here in Lagos State. Please remember to send your pictures, stories, videos via our WhatsApp iReport feature and also on our social media platforms. Remember to join in the conversation. That's at Plus TV Africa on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And you can also watch the conversation live at Plus TV Africa on YouTube.
All right, we'll be back after this break.